how they wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger, for there was no room for them at the inn. We are told about the visitors who came to visit him, the shepherds abiding in their fields, keeping watch over flocks by night. And we are told about the wise men who brought gifts from afar because they saw a great star in the sky. Legend, not scripture, tells us there was another individual who came to see the baby. An individual whose stories we will not find in the pages of the Bible. And yet, as the story of the little drummer boy may be totally made up, there are great truths contained in its message. And that's the story we're going to hear today. It was dark outside when little Zach awoke. As he laid in bed, he realized that he had woke up because he could hear something outside of his window. Zach got out of bed, slipped to the window, hoping not to wake up his parents. Immediately, Zach realized that there was no ordinary group of people passing by. But these people were richly dressed. They had servants leading their camels. They had dark skin and headed in the direction of Herod's castle. Zach could only assume that they must be visiting kings who came to visit Herod. Oh boy, Zach thought, a parade! I love parades! And so he did. The boy had always had a fascination with parades and costumes and bands. So great was his fascination that last year, for his birthday, his parents bought him a drum. And so Zach did what any 12-year-old boy would do. He goes and he crawls to his closet and he opens the door as quiet as he can and he straps on his drum. And then he starts walking out the door. He closes the door behind him, being careful not let it squeak. And then after he had snuck out of the house, being sure that his parents had not awakened, he marched right over to that parade. He got in line right behind the last camel and started banging away at his drum. Parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum. Poor Zach he just wasn't prepared for what happened next. He had forgotten that his parents were not the only ones who were asleep in the city of Jerusalem. Candles were lit, men leaned out their windows to see what was going on. People shouted, "Cut that racket out!" And one person even threw a rock at him. But Zach kept on playing his drum. He wasn't going to miss out on this parade, not for his life. Even the three very important people tried to silence him. They turned around and gave him dirty looks. They put their fingers to their lips. They scowled at him. But they could not keep Zach from playing his drum. One of them even sent his servant back to try to silence Zach. "What are you doing?" the servant asked. "It's the middle of the night." "I'm playing my drum for your parade," Zach answered. Every parade needs a drum. You'll need me to announce your arrival at the Herod's palace." Please don't," insisted the servant. "You'll wake the whole village and wake King Herod as well. We don't need to have our arrival announced. Thank you, but no thank you." Zach didn't have a clever reply, so he let the drum answer for him. Parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum. People kept yelling out their windows, the wise men continued to scowl, and the servant tried to take his drumsticks away. But Zach would not quit. So the parade wound its way through the quiet city streets, which weren't so quiet anymore. They continued on their way toward the palace. Plod, plod, plod went the camels. Step, step, step went the servant. Parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum went the noisy drum. Finally, the little parade arrived at the palace just an hour or two before dawn. Zach was insistent on staying with the parade, but the palace guards took his drum away and made him sit outside the palace gates while the great men from the east walked in and talked with Herod. So Zach waited and waited. He waited and he thought. He thought about the men scowling at him. He thought about the people yelling at him from their windows. And he thought about that person who threw a rock at him. He thought about the servant who tried to steal his drumsticks. And he thought about the guard who stood by the corner watching him closely. "Why doesn't anyone like my drum?" the little drummer boy thought. "It's a nice drum. It was bought just for parades, just like this one. Those men must be very important. They needed a royal welcome. Why is everyone so grumpy tonight? Well, after a while, the royal visitors came back out of the castle and got to their camels and servants, and they went to the palace grounds. The guard returned Zach's drum to the rightful owner, as the scowling men tried to convince Zach that they would have a long journey ahead of them, that they really didn't need a drummer boy. But Zach insisted. So he fell right in line behind the camels and their cargo. He marched down the center of the street, banging on his drum. Parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum. He marched out of Jerusalem, following the parade all the way to Bethlehem. People in Bethlehem weren't any happier than the people in Jerusalem. Only now it was daytime, so they stood on the side of the streets and made fun of him. They made fun of his clothes, and they made fun of his drum, calling it a silly plaything. Some of the neighborhood kids even threw mud at him just to add to the insult. But Zach, he kept playing for his parade of very important people. He proudly marched down the street right behind the parade. Plod, plod, plod went the camels. Step, step, step went the servant. Parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum went the noisy drum. And this continued all the way to the outskirts of town. The sun had just set, and Zach realized that there was a beautiful star in the sky. He didn't know how he had missed it the night before. Perhaps he'd been too busy playing his drums. As he looked up at the sky, he realized that the three important people were looking carefully at the star as well, and they were walking right towards it. It got brighter and more brilliant until it was almost as light as day, and the parade continued to walk. Plod, plod, plod went the camel. Step, step, step went the servant. Parum-pum-pum-pum, parum-pum-pum-pum went the noisy drum. Zach realized that they were getting closer to their destination as he saw the star seem to set upon the rooftop of a simple little house. At this point, everything changed. The servant who had put up with the banging drum all night long came to Zach, this time trying a different approach. Thank you for your services tonight. We have arrived at our destination. We no longer need you to play your drum. Please stop now while my masters bring homage to the new king. Zach, having tired of playing the drum all through the night and throughout the day, he stopped playing. And then he had the most marvelous idea. The servant had just said something about a new king, and he was here. Perhaps he could look through the window and see this king. And so, as the wise men made their way through the front door of the house, Zach crept alongside, hoping for a glimpse into the living room of the house. And what he saw amazed him. These three grown men, richly dressed, knelt on the dirt floor in front of a baby. Zach couldn't believe his eyes. He watched as each of them brought out a gift. The light glinted off the shiny gold, and the air was filled with the aroma of sweet spices. It can't be, he thought. Those men are giving those expensive gifts to a baby. That is probably one very important baby. As Zach looked through the window, he wondered what he could give the king. He didn't have gold. He didn't have expensive spices. Even if he went home, he couldn't find anything worthy to give this king. But here he was, in the presence of a great king, and he had nothing to bring. So Zach slumped down the outside of the house. He cried, for he had nothing of value. Soon Zach realized that the three men had left the house and were getting ready to leave again. Zach didn't have the heart to grab his drum and play for them as they left town. My drum, Zach thought. I know what I'll give this baby. I'll play my drum for him. And Zach started to get up, excited to know that he had a gift for the baby king inside. And just as Zach began to strap his drum over his shoulders, he remembered. He remembered the people yelling out the windows. He remembered the wise men scowling at him and the servant who tried to take his drumstick away. He remembered the children who threw mud at him and King Herod's guard who had taken his drum away. That baby doesn't want to hear my drum, he thought. Babies don't like loud noises any better than grumpy old men. Wise men or palace guards, forget it. Zach started to trudge off towards Jerusalem. Boy, a voice behind him came. "Can I help you? Are you lost?" Zach looked back and saw the mother of the baby behind him. She had come outside to watch the wise men leave and had spotted him outside the house. Zach started to run away, but something stopped him. Perhaps it was the memory of the bright star above the house. It might have been the knowledge that it was a long way to Jerusalem, and this kind lady might have some food for him. Or maybe it was a voice inside that told him to stop. Zach turned around. His head hung and his shoulders hunched over. Tears continued to flow down his face as he looked at the beautiful lady before him. I don't have anything for the king. Only I could play my drum, but nobody likes it when I play my drum. Mary, with kindness in her eyes, looked at the poor, disheveled boy in his tattered clothes and welcomed him into her house. He wiped the tears from his eyes and started slowly and quietly. Pum-pum-pum-pum, pum-pum-pum-pum, pum-pum-pum-pum. As Zach looked in wonder, he saw a smile spread across the face of the great king who was pleased with Zach's simple gift. And that, my friends, is the story of the little drummer boy. While the story stops there, people throughout the ages have always wondered what happened to little Zach. Did he grow up? Did he get married? Did he have little drummer boys? Did he play in great parades for other kings? What happened to the little drummer boy? No one knows for sure. But I like to think it went a little like this. Zach grew up and played his drum in many wonderful parades. He played his drum for royalty and for the national holidays. He played his drum in the morning and he played his drum in the evening. But he never again played his drum in the middle of the night, for he knew what reaction it would be. People loved to hear Zach play his drum during the day. Zach never forgot the special gift that he was able to give that baby king. 6 years after Jesus' birth, Zach was 18. He got married to a beautiful bride. They had a wonderful life together. They never were very wealthy, but their house was always filled with love. For the same humble boy who gave the simple but noisy gift of love to the newborn king, he grew into a humble man who gave gifts of love to all he met. Before Zach reached the age of 30, he died from a serious illness. He was survived by his beautiful wife, who continued to live in poverty. She cherished Zach's drum and treasured his memory in her heart. Whenever she looked at the drum in the closet, she remembered the story that Zach had told her about the baby who smiled at his playing his drum. When she thought of that story, she remembered to always give of her best, even if it didn't quite seem good enough. One day, Zach's widow went to the temple. There was a great teacher there by the name of Jesus. He had caused quite a stir within the town with his teachings and his miracles. She watched in awe as he taught about paying taxes to Caesar and about what would happen at the resurrection of the dead. Soon the time came for the collection to be taken. All who had gathered in the temple passed by a box and deposited their gifts in the box. Now Zach's widow had always felt a little insecure at this time because she had very little to give. Indeed, all she had was 2 copper pennies, not even a penny in our time. That was all the money that was left in the house. But she timidly got in line to walk past the box. They brought as many gold coins as they could so that others could admire their coins glittering and clanging into the temple treasury. Soon it was the widow's turn to deposit her money. She walked past the box and very quietly put her 2 pennies into the box. As she walked away, she realized that the teacher was looking at her and talking about her. Her heart skipped a beat because she was filled with such shame at her gift. But not to fear, for as soon as she saw upon the face of the teacher the very same smile that her husband Zach had seen many years ago as he unknowingly played his simple drum for the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords.